social slime, they don't matter, genocide. Sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air, fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one lives countries, lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social side, they don't matter, genocide. Sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care. See the shit, force of air, fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one leaves countries, lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This is Rock the Boat right here on UCY.TV, my favorite online network. And I'm your host for the next 2 hours. It is the 14th of January. It is cold. And we lost some snow. We had one day of plus 10. And it did melt a fair bit of the snow, but it's trying hard to replace it, such as climate change. Anyways, I did the show I did last night. Really, I mean, I know what's going on. I've known what's going on since I was very young. But it gave me a little bit different perspective last night, and on the word that is really important for people to understand, and that is the shame. And they shame you into accepting everything they're doing to you. In other words, they shame you into shutting up. And all words, and like I said last night on the show last night, is that I really wish everybody would go get a copy of the etymology dictionary and bookmark it or stick it on your toolbar or whatever, because like a coin, every word has two sides to it. And there's a good side and a bad side to basically every word. And we're being run by the bad side. And we need to come to terms with the language that is being used to basically bastardize our minds and our nations. So we'll do some more on that later, but when I was rooting around last night, I found in Blackburn News, a local online news service, that our Lieutenant Governor is coming to our town on Tuesday. And our municipality is only 12,000 people. The town itself is around 7,500 people. A really not important place, although we do have, I think it's the largest nuclear facility on the planet here. And the storyline is that the lieutenant, if I can dig this out here, the storyline is this: Ontario Lieutenant Governor to visit Kincardine. The Lieutenant Governor of Ontario will be in Kincardine next week. The Honourable Elizabeth Dowdswell, will speak with students at the Kincardine Davidson Center on Tuesday, January the 16th. And I expect I will be there. She will also help open a local Ontario 150 trail, as last year was the 150th anniversary of this deception called Canada. And we'll meet with Mayor Ann Eadie. Now, Ann Eadie would not be the mayor if I'd been allowed to run in 2014, which I wasn't. They do not want me running for mayor of this town, but I will if I don't win. As a Libertarian candidate in the provincial election in June, I will be running in the fall for mayor of this little burg. But Mayor Ann Eadie is a typical mayor in this country, completely brain dead, a puppet, does what she's told when she's told to do it. Because it's the CAOs or / city managers who actually run the municipalities. Same thing stateside. The mayors, but their only important function is to be the front or the face or the one that cuts the ribbons. Other than that, the mayor has no importance whatsoever. They have one vote like everybody else. They have no superiority within the council, except they sit at the head table and wear a ribbon or a chain or whatever the hell it is they wear. So the lieutenant governor is coming to my little town on Tuesday to speak with students about what? Probably sustainability, climate change, overpopulation, and also to open a 150 trail and meet with Mayor Ann Eadie. Now, Mayor Ann Eadie, and trust me, is an idiot. She was a school teacher, which makes her an idiot. And I remember I confronted her out in front of a store one day, maybe, I don't know, it was last summer, because I'd received a letter from apparently from Ann Eadie, the mayor, because I've been rattling the cage up at the municipal hall pretty good, and had basically everybody trying to hide their deceptions and lies. So I get this letter from supposedly the mayor, but it's emailed to me from the CAO, and then it's CC'd to the police. So when I ran into the mayor, I said, this letter you sent me, how is it you sent me a letter, but the letter was sent by the CAO? I said, did you even write the damn letter? And her response to me was, I can write a letter. I was a teacher. I am a teacher, she says. No, I said, you were a teacher. Now you're a puppet. But the question is, did you even write the letter? And she says, well, I may have helped. So the letter I received from you, you didn't write. And then it was CC'd to the police. Because as the police chief said before he was run out of town, well, he didn't run out of town, he got out of town after I went to the police board, and they didn't even show up at the police board because they know that I know, and they don't want to deal with that. But he did before I went to the police board. The chief of police did call me at home to explain to me my problem, which I thought was rather funny. My problem, according to the chief of police, is that I'm diametrically opposed to what 99% of the community thinks. And I guess I wasn't shamed into believing the bull crap. But when I asked him, I said, well, that's really interesting, because I didn't know 99% of the people knew who I was. But anyways, could you tell me how you conducted this research, your data? Did you make it was a phone survey? You called everybody? And everybody told you that they feel that I'm diametrically opposed to what they all think? Or did you do a mail out? Because I didn't get a phone call and I didn't get nothing in the mail. Well, that kind of shook the police chief because, you know, but anyways, after I went to the police board hearing, he was out of town within a couple of weeks, along with the staff sergeant who also was moved out of this town for exactly 2 years, which is the 2 years that they have a limit on when you can sue these clowns of 2 years. So 2 years later, this deputy chief, who with the police chief, did not attend the police board meeting. They sat outside until I left the building, and then they jumped out of the car and ran inside to see what I had to say, which apparently forced the municipality, who is in the parent position of the police because they contract with them, to vacate both of them the hell out of town. This is what we're living in. So Dowdeswell says it's part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals focusing on life on the land. The very land they're trying to run you off and into the cities. Now, when I went up to get my coffee this morning, I was talking to some folks I know, some ex-contractors, retired contractors, and just the general people that were coming in, and a hydro worker who works up at the plant, about Dowdeswell. And the first gentleman I talked to, I said, you know, Lieutenant Governor's coming to town on Tuesday. He says, you know, I don't care, and I don't even know who he is. I said, well, he's actually a she. So the Lieutenant Governor of the province of Ontario, nobody knows who that is. Don't know if it's a he or a she or anything else. Nobody I talked to knew who Lieutenant Governor was. And this is why I always say, don't blame the politicians. Go look in the mirror. You are the one that's at fault. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is extremely dangerous. And they've made people more ignorant every year for a very, very long time so that they can do what they want with us, and trying to get people to rise up when people are bound and determined to remain ignorant is a bit of a tough job, but it's a job we have to do. Now, Elizabeth Dowdeswell is a UN puppet. Well, she was born here. She ended up at the UN. She was the head of UNEP, which is United Nations Environmental Program. She was mentored by Morris Strong, bum boy of the globalists and the Rockefellers. And there's videos out there, and there's one video in particular, and I'm not going to bother trying to find it right now, but where she's speaking after she, I think it's after she was done with UNEP, talking about she's tired of this incrementalism. This was before she became Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. She's tired of this incrementalism. Let's just make an event and get it done. But then, you know, the incrementalism has been driving her nuts for a long time. And then she said, well, we just have to keep doing what we're doing. Slow. But they've pulled all the stops now. They're coming at us hard. But the really disgusting part is that, you know, people are whining and complaining about the high cost of electricity in this province, the sell-off of our electrical system. But they have no background. They don't go looking for any background. They just want to remain ignorant. because it was Morris Strong who started UNEP, who was appointed by Bob Rae of the NDP, the Socialist International, to restructure Ontario Hydro. Bob Rae is a Jew who went to school at I forget what the name of the school is, but it's at Oxford. There's a whole bunch. I thought Oxford was just a university. There's a whole bunch of schools there. And the school is a Marxist school. And the turtle, which was their mascot, was named Rosa, after Rosa, I think it's Rosenberg or whatever, who's a Marxist. And appoints his godfather, Morris Strong, to restructure Ontario Hydro. But the restructuring was the takeover and sell-off of our electrical system. That was the whole plan. But it really bugs me because nobody I talked to today had a clue who Elizabeth Dowdeswell was. So this article says that she's coming to talk about sustainability and opening a 150 trail. But I don't have the book in front of me here. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in this house. But I want to thank Mark from Sudbury. He actually went to a local used bookstore here and found a very large volume of which Elizabeth Dowdeswell was the head of, and that is nuclear waste. So the real reason Elizabeth Dowdeswell is coming here is because she was in charge of the nuclear waste program, and they want to dig a ditch here right beside Lake Huron. And I blasted out the intakes when I was a young guy for the heavy water plant. And that's all shale there. It's all shale. Now, we only went down, I think it was 40 or 50 feet for these intakes. But everything we drilled and blasted was shale. Now, they want to go down fairly deep. But they're right on the edge of, within a mile of the lake. Now, this place was picked first. The first windmills in Ontario went up at where? The nuclear plant. Wait a minute. How is a windmill going to compete with a nuclear plant? But that all has to do with Morris Strong and United Nations Environmental Program. It's all about seeding the brain. And so nobody wants the nuclear waste buried beside Lake Huron. And all kinds of noise coming from the American side because we're the second highest up lake. Right? You got Superior on the top, you got Michigan and Huron basically side by each, and then the other lakes going out to the St. Lawrence Seaway. So should this thing leak radioactive waste into Lake Huron, it has the possibility, I'm not going to say it will, but it has the possibility of poisoning our water system. Now this place was picked first because the nuclear plants are run through international law on that. So this place was picked, and then they picked a bunch of other places, but this was ground zero. This was the decided site. So they go and have all of these meetings and discussions and all this kind of stuff all over the place, and then they slowly weed it back down to the first pick, which is here. And Elizabeth Dowdeswell being at the head of the Nuclear Waste Authority at one point, and it's quite a large volume. I'll look it up, and I'm not sure what I would. Maybe I can just dig it out online and give it to you. But so she's not coming to Kincardine to open a trail. They don't do that. She's coming here to schmooze with the mayor, who's a complete airhead, And of course, the mayor will be all impressed that Elizabeth Dowdwell took the time to speak to her. And the mayor has already, all of these petitions and that have been signed everywhere, both sides of the lake, not wanting this nuclear waste dump anywhere near a Great Lake. Dowdwell will come up here and then say that it's a great idea and it's perfectly safe. And the mayor has already put out a statement to counter the statements come from the state side, saying that the residents of Kincardine are in favor of this nuclear waste dump. Well, I talked to a few people this morning at the store, and I didn't find anyone who was in favor of it. I know I'm certainly not in favor of it. So the mayor is saying, by saying the residents of Kincardine are in favor of the nuclear dump site, she's saying I'm in favor and everybody else is, which is completely not true. So I'm going to have to take her to task on that. Let me just see if I can work this out. But Elizabeth Dowdwell is United Nations player, which is a globalist player. And the goal is the end of nation states and control of all people, all decisions, and all resources on the planet. And they weasel these people into these positions. I mean, you think about my province here. We have Elizabeth Dowdwell, who's a lieutenant governor. This is the one that signs the legislation into law. The lieutenant governor of Ontario is sitting as queen in place, or in place of queen. So she's really sitting on the throne in Ontario, because no legislation can pass unless it's signed by the Queen. So the Queen can't sign all this stuff, so they put in the lieutenant governors in the province and the governor general in the federal side. But these are all in place of Queen. Now, people say that we're an independent country and Britain ain't got nothing to do with this. Well, wait a minute here. If these people are sitting in place of Queen and you can't pass legislation unless it's signed by the Queen or an agent of the Queen, then how does that make us a sovereign nation? You know, the stupidity in this country is over the top. And it's the same side, it's the same stateside. You know, once you elect the prime minister here, who is not the prime minister of the people, but the prime minister of the Queen. That's what the title says. And that makes the prime minister the king, because Tinkerbell Trudeau, our present, the present prime minister, not our prime minister, his daddy back in the 70s when he was running the show, with Morris Strong, no less, and Rockefeller, and he was Jesuit trained, and he was a member of the Club of Rome. But you never read any of that stuff in the media. He moved all of the power of the elect into the office of the prime minister, which makes them king, or agent of the Queen, which is, I guess, the Queen's bum boy. And stateside, I was so impressed with the American layout for government when I was young, because when I compared the two, once someone gets a majority or party gets majority in this country, or even minority with another party that will back them, you have a dictatorship. And I was always impressed with the American system that was supposedly set up with checks and balances. But once the first executive order was allowed through, then the president is the king, because he can ignore everything else and put in executive orders, which makes him the king. So do the people have any representation? The answer is no. No. Can you recall these people? No. Can you fire these people? No. Well, you can fire them at election, but a word of advice to the American people in particular at this point in time is that I see that they're grooming Oprah, the black devil bitch from hell, and grooming her to make a run for the presidency in the next election. To my American friends, please don't let that happen. We're run by the bad side. Okay, there's only two sides. There's good and there's bad, or good and evil. There's only two sides. And evil, or the bad side, is basically controlling just about everything. And we have to put a stop to that. So anyways, I'm going to take a quick boo here and see if I can dig this out. This woman, Elizabeth Dowdeswell, is a very dangerous woman. And she looks like this, motherly old woman. As evil as you can possibly get. She was born in Northern Ireland. Lieutenant Governor of Ontario since 2014, Governor General David Johnston, and now Julia Payette, who was a space cadet, was in the space program. I don't know if she was on one of the shuttles or what, but she is most definitely a space cadet. And they always put these people in place when they want to push an agenda. We used to have, and these are all UN agendas, the previous lieutenant governor we had in Ontario, his claim to fame was that he'd been a weatherman, and I think he did a small talk show or something, but he was in a wheelchair, David Onley. And that was back in the time when they were pushing access to buildings. We were building more wheelchair ramps than you shake a stick at. And I have no problem with access for people who have a medical problem or a physical problem. You should be able to get access. But this is one of their propaganda pieces, and so that's why he was picked as the lieutenant governor to push a program. And I called David Onley's office, lieutenant governor's office, when he was lieutenant governor, and I was talking to the staff, and because he's the one, he's the queen in place at the time, or in place of queen, and because his claim to fame was a weatherman, what qualifications does he have to be lieutenant governor other than being the poster boy for wheelchair people? And then my also question was, if that's what he was, a weatherman, then everything that comes through the legislature is written by lawyers, which is all legalese. So how is it that David Onley can go through these bills in that and decipher these things and make a decision whether or not to sign them? Or does he even read them? And the answer I got back from the staff was, no, he doesn't read any of it. He just signs it. So, the idea that you have a legitimate government in this province or in this country is farcical. We are being ruled from the outside, and we are just basically sitting ducks. And it really bugs me too, because when I go to the store to get my coffee before these shows, I always see people coming in. They always got a mitt full of lottery tickets. They all look like zombies. They have the same look. Their heads are bowed down and they're staring at lottery tickets or they're staring at a cell phone. But they're always staring at something in their hand. About 50% of the people I see come in the store, they pick up a newspaper. They either pick up the right-wing newspaper, the Toronto Sun, or they pick up the left-wing paper, the Toronto Star. And they buy these things, and they take them home and they read them. And they just continually fill their heads with nonsense. They think they're informed. They don't seem to have the capacity to understand or the wording in any of this stuff. And the newspapers, if you think you're reading newspapers to be informed, please understand these newspapers are written for a grade 8 reading level or less. So they really, the ones that write the papers really don't look upon you as too intelligent. And you should be pissed off about that. But then the papers are right for the most part. In the fact that the people have been dumbed down so freaking far, they're basically close to illiterate. So, but when I talk to these people, it's spooky. Like when I was talking today, the fact that the lieutenant governor is coming to this little town, nobody cared. Most of them didn't know it was male or female. Some of them don't even know what a lieutenant governor is. And, some of the people say, I don't care. Well, how can you not care? Well, what do I care about? Well, I don't know. Maybe you're, the people in the country, maybe. Maybe your family. Well, I don't care. I don't care about the government because the government doesn't care about me. Well, you got that part right, about them not caring about you. And that should piss you off. But people seem to want to be ignorant. In fact, I know they want to be ignorant. I've been at this a long time. I've been talking to people since I was extraordinarily young. And people want to be ignorant. Somehow they think there's safety in ignorance. Meanwhile, you're losing your country, you're losing your resources, and you will be at the beck and call of the internationalists, which are basically Marxist. Let me just run through some of this stuff. Now, I'm sure that there's going to be police at the community center. In fact, I know there's going to be police at the community center. When they held the discussions here, which went on for about 2 weeks at the Legion, what is that, about 3 years ago now? Maybe 4? Maybe 5. Anyways, time flies. This town was absolutely swamped with police. They were everywhere. They were cruising all the streets when they're discussing burning the nuclear waste here. The police even went so far as to go to people's homes. Talk about Gestapo. They had a list of people who were vocal about not wanting nuclear waste built beside the shores of Lake Huron. And the police actually went to these people's homes and knocked on their doors in order to intimidate them into putting the duct tape on their faces while this discussion was going on. So, seeing as it's the lieutenant governor coming here, I'm sure there's going to be police, which is okay. I've been assaulted several times now by the police, and I'm still got one shoulder that's screwed up. But that's just part and parcel of the game here. But also, at the other side, there's a lot of police that I've been talking to for a lot of years who get what I'm saying. And so it's rather funny, because I had police in my yard one day when they came to put the smart meter on, and they're always there to, for public safety or whatever, or to make sure the piece isn't broken. And I've never broken the piece. So this is the kind of thing that I got going with the police, because there was 2 cops came in with these guys that were going to put the meter on the house, and I wasn't griping at anybody. All I did was ask the guys that had been here. I said, like, when are they going to turn these things on? And he said, probably won't be for about 6 months. And I said, well, could you do me a favor, seeing as I know what these things represent? Would you mind coming back in about 2 weeks before they fire them up and put it on then, if I haven't been able to get rid of the damn thing prior? And the 2 old gentlemen from the utility said, yeah, hey, no problem. So they left. The very next day, they come walking down the same sidewalk with the same box, same guys, and I'm thinking, man, it's like that movie Groundhog Day. I said, didn't we just do this yesterday? And so I went out to ask them why they were back in less than 24 hours. And in came 2 cops behind them. And I said, what's going on? And the old guys said, they went back and they explained it. It made perfect sense to them. But the CAO of the utility told them that they would be in large employment problems if they didn't get that meter on the house like now. So they came back the next day. But I had 2 cops, and the one cop playing cop was somewhat agitated and uppity, and the other cop who I dealt with before, I just said to him, I says, what are you doing here? He says, we're here to keep the peace. I said, nobody's ever broken the peace here, ever. All right? You're just running shotgun for the corporation, and that's your job, right? That is the job of the police, is to protect the corporation, be it the municipal corporation, the state corporation, the federal corporation. You've never seen the cops break rank and stand on the side of the people. And all of our countries are corporations. They are they're the boys and gals who protect the corporation and let the corporation run over the people. So I just said to the one cop, I says, like you don't need 2 of you here, because I've never broken a piece. And the other cop started getting uppity. And I said, couldn't he go find something else to do? And my good cop says to the ugly cop, yeah, you know what? Ron's a good guy. Why don't you go find something else to do? Well, the look on that, on the uppity cop's face was just like, what? The hell are you saying? He says, yeah, you can go find something else to do. Ron's a good guy. And so the uppity cop left. So I have a certain rapport with these people because I care about their families as much as I care about everybody else's families. And nobody wants to bite the hand that feeds them, so to speak. Or the police force in general now has been militarized, and they're not looking for the happy, caring neighborhood cop. Most of our cops in the old days, when we had town police, most of the police were locals. But now they've driven the local police out and brought in the thugs from the thug factory. wherever that is. And a lot of these guys are pretty brain dead, but we keep working with them. So I don't know what kind of reception I'm going to get when the mayor sees me walk into the community hall and when the police see me going to the community hall with a camera. We'll see what kind of reaction happens. But I got to get there for Tuesday. I got to find out what time of day this thing's going on. Should get some stuff printed up between now and Tuesday and hand it out to the students. Well, the students are starting to get it because when I talk to the students now, and I just ask them simple questions, and I do these things over time so I can gauge the reactions and to the propaganda. And I've said this lots of times, 5 years ago even, when I asked the students, you do realize the teachers are lying to you. They were in the psychological mode of hugging the lie. And they defended their teachers, and they believed global warming was real, and the overpopulation was a problem, and all the rest of this nonsense has been fed to these children. But now, when I ask kids, same age range, if they realize the teachers are lying to them, in most cases now they look at me and go, well, yeah. So, the shelf life of the propaganda, which is a product, the shelf life is about run its best before date. So they keep churning up new propaganda, but I think generally now the children in the schools are starting to understand that they're being lied to, which is a huge, huge, huge step forward, because we're going to need the children, the young adults, if we're going to put a stop to this globalist nonsense. Anyways, I'll do this first. She's a fat little gray-haired lady. Let's see, she was born in Belfast, Northern Ireland, United Kingdom in 1944. Moved to Canada in 1947, rural Saskatchewan. Her father, Desmond Patton, was United Church of Canada minister. Well, there's a stroke against you. Dowd's married at a young age, but soon divorced. She attended the University of Saskatchewan, the Utah State University, and later became a teacher and university lecturer. Dowdeswell left teaching and entered public service, serving in Saskatchewan as Deputy Minister of Culture and Youth during the New Democratic Party government of Alan Blakely. Now, Alan Blakely is dead now. Alan Blakely was up to his ass in this globalism. Just look the guy up. I have if you go to my old blog, CanadianTruths.wordpress.com, and punch in Alan Blakely, that's Blakeney, you will get the story on Alan. Total player, right? So she was the Deputy Minister of Culture and Youth during the New Democratic, call that Socialist International, party government of Alan Blakely. But was dismissed along with other deputy ministers after the Progressive Conservative government of Grant Devine took power in 1982. She served in the federal public service in the 1980s, serving at one point as Assistant Deputy Minister at Environment Canada. Okay? Now that is tied directly to the United Nations, the Rockefeller Foundation, and Morris Strong, with responsibility for the Atmospheric Environment Service and negotiating the Framework Convention on Climate Change. Now, remember, this is our lieutenant governor of this province. This is the actual boss of the province, the Queen in place, or in place of Queen. With responsibility, on climate change. She also led a public inquiry into Canada's unemployment benefits program and federal water policy. Now, we got inundated with propaganda which called Canadians over and over and over again. This is in your local papers. Canadians are water and energy hogs, and this has to change. In 1992, Dowdeswell was unanimously elected to lead the United Nations Environment Program in Nairobi. Now, that's where UNEP's head office is, and that's where Maurice Strong set it up. And she served there until 1998 at the rank of Undersecretary General. From 1998 to 2010, she was adjunct professor at McLaughlin Roman Center for Global Health at the University of Toronto. Which is basically under the auspice of the WHO, the World Health Organization, which is, again, the United Nations. And let's see, Global Health at the University of Toronto, while also serving as founding president and CEO of the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. From 2010 until her appointment as Lieutenant Governor, she was the president and CEO of Council of Canadian Academies. So this is the woman that's going to show up here on Tuesday under the auspice of opening a trail and talking about sustainability with the students. So I imagine all of the schools will be, because our community center has a very big hall in it, I imagine all of the students from all of the schools will be ushered in to listen to this witch from hell. But the real reason she's here is to stand beside the mayor on the mayor's brilliant assessment of the safety of burning nuclear waste along the Lake Huron shoreline, because they're bringing Dowdeswell in because there's so much angst throughout Ontario and on the American side about this idea of burning nuclear waste. So she was head of the CEO of the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, and that's the book that Mark from Sudbury had found in that local bookstore. It's quite a large book, but it's still the United Nations. Okay, so as Lieutenant Governor, Dowdeswell was appointed Lieutenant Governor by the Governor General David Johnston on the advice of Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Now, this is the other problem people have. Okay, Stephen Harper was the PM, but he was a conservative. And people still think that the conservatives are different than the liberals somehow. Okay, same game. Okay, on the advice of Prime Minister Stephen Harper, who selected Dowdeswell from a short list devised by the Advisory Committee on Vice-Regal Appointments. September 23, 2014, she was sworn in during a ceremony held at Queen's Park in Toronto, during which she addressed members of the Ontario Cabinet, members of Provincial Parliament, and other guests. She is the third woman to serve in the position, following Pauline Mills McGibbon and Hilary Weston. Now, Weston, I don't know about McGibbon, but Westons have a tax-exempt foundation which is pushing climate change, sustainability, and the takedown of your nation. Breaking with tradition, Dowdeswell declared in her installation address that she would not immediately espouse a particular area of focus during her mandate as Lieutenant Governor. Instead, she set out to engage the people of Ontario, listening to their concerns and ideas. In the time since her installation, she had said that inclusion have resonated with Ontarians. Inclusion, okay, that's straight out of the United Nations, that's straight out of the Aga Khan. global, I forget what it's called now. We talked about that one other day, about cultural inclusion, have resonated with Ontarians. In addition, Dowdeswell had taken to sharing what she hears during her visits around Ontario, dubbing herself Storyteller-in-Chief. In other words, Queen of Bullshit. In April 2016, Dowdeswell reported having undertaken 1,066 official engagements during the first 18 months of her mandate, an average of 711 per year. As Lieutenant Governor, she has undertaken several missions abroad to the United States and to the United Kingdom as they work to take down the West. Well, it doesn't say that, but that's what she was doing. On September 12, 2016, Dowdeswell read a speech from the throne to open the second session of the 41st Parliament of Ontario. It was her first throne page speech to take office in September 2014. Now, what amazes me is that nobody I talk to even knows who the hell Elizabeth Dowdeswell is, let alone her background in history. And this is ignorance. And ignorance is not bliss, it is dangerous. It is damn dangerous. So she got her own ribbon. Appointments. Order of Canada, May 2012, November 2014. The Dame of Justice of the Most Vulnerable Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, November 26, 2014, the same day. Vice Prior of the Most Venerable Order of the Hospital of, it's the same thing. September 2014, member of the Order of Ontario. September 14, Chancellor of the Order of Ontario. Medals, June the 12th, Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. 2014 of September, the Colonel Regiment of the Queen's York Rangers. Again in September 2014, Honorary Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police. Okay? So what we have here is we have a globalist, the Honorary Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police. That one I didn't know about. So we have a globalist who is the Honorary Commissioner of our police. So will there be police at the meeting on Tuesday? I would think that's a huge yes. So down here also says, see the monarchy of Canada. Now, if Canada is a sovereign nation, why are we doing with a monarch? And what are we doing with all of these lieutenant governors and governor general who are acting on behalf of the Queen? So we have Dowdeswell in 2017, 29th Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, incumbent, assumed office, 2014, who's the monarch, Elizabeth II, Governor General David Johnston, Julia Payette, Premier Kathleen Wynne, who's a dyke, preceded by David Onley, who's the guy in the wheelchair pushing accessibility to buildings. Third Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Program, started by Maurice Strong. In office, 82 to 98. Secretary General, Boutros Ghali, Kofi Annan, preceded by whoever, I can't say that name, succeeded by Klaus Topher or whatever. She was born Violet Elizabeth Patton. 1973, born Belfast, University of Saskatchewan, and Utah State University. This woman is the epitome of evil. And that's really quite unfortunate. But everybody that is in politics in this country, I don't care what party you're with, except for, because I'm going to be running for them in June, I will be the candidate for the Libertarian Party in my local here in Bruce area, and we'll see how that goes, but I intend on having a lot of fun with that one. Okay, so the Nuclear Waste Management Organization of Canada was established in 2002 under the Nuclear Fuel Waste Act to investigate approaches for managing Canada's used nuclear fuel. Currently, nuclear power plants are operating in Ontario and New Brunswick. The Act required Canadian electricity generating companies which use electricity or use nuclear fuel to establish a waste management organization to provide recommendations to the Government of Canada on the long-term management of used nuclear fuel. The legislation also required the waste owners to establish segregated trust funds to finance the long-term management of the used fuel. The Act further authorized the Government of Canada to decide on the approach, the government's choice, when they will be implemented by the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. Now, when they first started this, about building this nuclear waste facility, it was low to medium. It was actually started as low grade, which was basically work gloves and coveralls and stuff. You know, when people go into work in the reactor, that this stuff gets, once it's worn one time, it gets tossed. And so that was the whole plan. But as we've gone along, the nuclear waste has gone from low to high. It was low, then it was low and medium, and I believe it's high now. So I'm not sure if they plan on burying the used nuclear fuel rods, which I think they are. Could be wrong on that one, but I think they are. And if they aren't now, they will be once they dig the hole. So in 2005, after 3 years study, the NWMO recommended adaptive phased management. In 2007, the Canadian government accepted the recommendation. Adaptive phased management is both a technical method and a management system with emphasis on adaptability. Technically, it is centralized containment and isolation of used nuclear fuel in a deep geological repository. Okay, so they're talking used nuclear fuel here now. But like I said, when they started, it was for low-level gloves, rags, coveralls, boots, stuff like that. So in this particular thing, it's saying that nuclear fuel, used nuclear fuel, those fuel rods, which are presently kept in basically what you would call swimming pools. The management system involves manageable phases, each marked by explicit decision points with continuing participation by interested Canadians. Only if you're for it. If you're against it, you may have a cop knocking on your door. But that makes sense because Elizabeth Dowdeswell was the whatever we call it, commissioner of the OPP, which are the police force of Ontario. That might explain why there were so many cops in this town when they were having the talks about this nuclear dump site. because it truly was nuts. You couldn't go on the street in this town. There weren't cruisers running back and forth on. So you know the whole plan is rather nefarious. The management system involves, manageable phases, each marked by explicit decision points with continuing participation and interest of Canadians, by interested Canadians. It allows for go, no-go decisions at each stage to take advantage of new technology or changing societal priorities. And that's again, you could put that into the shame game. They've been at this for a long time now, trying to wear the people down. And this is the whole idea, because it is a psychological, spiritual war. And they use both spiritual and psychological tools to bend you into accepting what they want to do. And if you stand up against it, then you get jumped on, not maybe physically, but you're shamed by the others. Same thing if you stand up, to the LGBTQ or Black Lives Matter, Idle No More, Occupy, any of this shit, or immigration, or the crap they're teaching the kids in the school. If you stand up to any of this stuff, their job is to badmouth you into submission. In other words, shame you into shutting up so they can continue to do what they want. Adaptive phase management provides an option for shallow underground storage at the central site if some or all of the used fuel needs to be moved before the deep repository is available. It also provides for continuous monitoring throughout implementation and over an extended period. Site selection process design on May 4th, 2009. The MWMO issued a discussion document outlining a proposed process for identifying an informed and willing community to host the Deep Geological Repository. The 16 to 24 billion national infrastructure project will involve development of the repository and will include the creation of a center of expertise. A proposal process for selecting a site was designed to be responsive to direction provided by Canadians who participated in dialogues with the MWMO during 2008. These participants said they wanted to be sure, above all, that the selected site was safe and secure for people and the environment, now and in the future, and that the process for choosing this site would be grounded in values and objectives that Canadians hold important. Well, none of this is true. This is just the propaganda. The discussion document set out scientific and technical requirements to guide site selection. It describes implementation through a partnership with an informed, willing community, and it outlines proposed steps through which interested communities would be able to learn more as they consider their potential interest in hosting the project. Well, the first site that was chosen was here. But people bitched about it, so they went out looking for willing communities. Well, they didn't find any. So they're back here again. And we now have the mayor saying that in response to the letters from mayors and that on the state side, that this mayor here says that the residents here are on side. Well, I talked to people this morning. I didn't find anybody on side. So Dowdeswell's being brought here not really to talk about the environment, And the whole environmental program, by the way, is a complete and total fraud and manipulation. If you are head of the environment and you actually care about the environment, but then the UNEP was started up by Morris Strong in Nairobi, who is a criminal. Luckily, he's dead now. But the man was a con man from, I think, day one. And he has been involved in this environmental nonsense since way back at the beginning, probably 1970 or late 60s, when Pierre Trudeau took power in this nation. Morris Strong was head of Power Corp, where a lot of our prime ministers were mentored, and other people in government. He was involved in Rio, both Rios, and 20 years prior to Rio, the first conference on human environment was headed by Morris Strong. And Morris Strong says that he believes in capitalism for him and his friends and socialism for everyone else. And that's what this is all about. Okay, this is the Sovietization of the West. That's what it is. People need to understand that. The same thing they did to Russia when they took it down and turned it into the Soviet Union. The whole idea is to turn it into a world union run by unelected people who created the thing. And it means that you're screwed. You're going to live under this massive, massive bureaucracy, and Canada has probably, I would say without a doubt, the largest bureaucracy per capita anywhere on the planet. It's completely out of hand, and again, we were warned in 1929. Go read it. The New Despotism. Warned by a Chief Justice in Britain that what was coming, and we had to stop it. Well, we were warned in 29, and we didn't stop it. Now 2018. We were warned in 42 BC by Cicero about being taken down from the inside. Apparently we didn't get that message either. And so we're just allowing the evil to run over top of us, and that has to stop. So yeah, the mayor here is going to just be what she is, an idiot. When I helped another candidate knock doors in 2014, it was rather amazing because I wasn't allowed because of a technicality. My manager or whatever failed to sign it off on a piece of paper at the end, and I did get called by the clerk and told me that I would have to sign off, but I told her I wouldn't likely be in Ontario in 2014, although I'm still here in 2018. And so when I went to run in 2014, they told me I couldn't run, and we could have fixed that with a simple signature or possibly an affidavit, but they don't want me running. It scared the shit out of them in 2010, and basically scared the hell out of them ever since. But, when I ran, I didn't run. I mean, I was helping someone knock doors that ran. And I was amazed, how many times, I was really amazed how many times I would go up to somebody and say, "Hi, I'm Ron, and I'm just helping Sheila do a bit of campaigning." And they would say, "We know who you are. Why are you not running?" And what did they think of Ann Eadie, the now mayor? Nothing good at all. So if you're not doing anything on Tuesday, and you're within driving distance of Kincardine, Ontario, I would encourage and welcome anyone to slide up here and join the party. I'm just going to finish this before I bring Christopher in here, because he sent me something this morning and he had a smile attached to it. So I got to figure out what that is. Anyways, expressions of interest. Site selection commenced in 2010. In May, the NMWO called for communities across Canada to submit expressions of interest to host a waste management site. Well, I'm sure they were inundated, eh? How would you like us to bury nuclear waste near your town? Oh shit, we're in for that. And it's going to get sold here because we're the ones that created the waste here because of the nuclear plant, that we have a responsibility to deal with the waste. Then it's going to be, because it's a $16 to $24 billion project apparently, that, and we have no industry here except the nuclear plant, that it will help create very well-paying jobs and boost the economy of this area. That's what we're going to sell it on. By March 2012, when the closed deadline was announced, 15 communities had made formal submissions. At the closing date of September 30th, 2012, announced that 21 communities were engaged in learning more about the project because of the money and the process. The total includes several communities that have asked the WMO to begin more detailed preliminary assessment studies, Step 3, as well as communities that have requested information and beliefs. 2013, WMO announced a short list of 4 communities that have been selected. Cretin, Saskatchewan, Hornepayne, Ontario, Ignace, Ontario, and Schreiber, Ontario. This selection ended phase 1 of this site selection. Phase 2 will involve more detailed assessment, including field negotiations and additional community engagement. Well, none of these places that they're listing here are in the running. We're down to here. And here isn't even listed here. But you can always trust the media. Anyways, I'm looking forward to Tuesday. I should make up some little brochures for the kiddies at the community center, because I would suspect every school is going to be there. So I suppose it would be a good time to write up a little brochure connecting the evil connections to Elizabeth Dowdwell and handing them out to the kids. Might be a good day. Anyways, Christopher, how are you doing? I think I have Christopher, do I not? I don't have Christopher. Where did Christopher? There we go, we're back. I made a hang up there and knocked us off the air for a second. Let me try and drag Chris in instead of... Sometimes it's difficult to add people. I don't know why, because I guess Microsoft owns Skype now. Remember how good Skype was, and now problems with it. I got you, Christopher.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I can add you, and sometimes I got to drag you in, so it didn't work adding, so I had to drag. I don't know if you want to discuss this or not, but I got a note from you this morning, and I told my wife, and she was quite concerned.
Well, that was a personal note, buddy. So.
Oh, all right, then I won't discuss it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you want to bring in the right and the left into it, we can discuss that.
Yeah, there's a song. I wish I knew some of those army songs, right, left, You know, they have a chant attached to it.
Democrat, Republic.
I was absolutely astounded today talking to the people down at the store. Holy crap, man. It freaked me out. Nobody knows nothing about nothing, and they don't want to know nothing about nothing, right?
Oh, yeah. I get that.
It's just amazing, you know. It's like I think I
Not
could
amazing,
make
it's
up some
scary.
T-shirts. I could probably sell those T-shirts. Hi, I'm Canadian. I'm stupid, ignorant, and I'm proud of it. Or something along those lines.
Oh, yeah.
You
Well,
know.
I mean, that goes across border too. So let's.
Well, I know. I know it. I mean, it's the West has been. When I watched that guy interview people in Germany, and I saw how driven down the German people have been through political correctness, it was scary. I mean, it was scary. I mean, if you go back to the day when Germany actually rose up as a nation, and you look at the German people today, it's beyond pathetic. It's really hard to look at.
Well, you've got to remember that they've got 2 million of their women were raped after the war. Everything they were fighting for, they ended up looking like the bad guy.
Right.
And then ever since then, and then after the women were raped and they killed all their most of the soldiers in their friggin' concentration camps that they put them in, the ones left over, yeah, of course they were demoralized, and then they were told how to conduct themselves for the rest of their lives at that point. So I mean, that's an uphill battle, man. I
realize that, but the thing here in the West, this is what really bothers me in the West. We've never been put through, 2 world wars here. We've never had a war on our land in North America, right? Except for the War of Independence and a few little skirmishes here and there. But we've never had a major attack against our nations here in North America, and yet the people, and that could be the reason people are so beat up, the same as they are in Europe, is that we've never had to defend our nations, and people can't maybe see the threat that is ongoing here because we've never actually had an invasion or a war against our nations. So maybe they got the same end result on both sides here. But the people here, I mean, when the guy said to me this morning, I said the lieutenant governor was coming to town on Tuesday. He goes, I don't even know who he is. And I go, it ain't a he. Well, whatever, right?
How many know? How many understand what that means? It's just
none. I mean, it's really quite pathetic. It's truly pathetic.
Yeah.
So. The show I did last night really rattled my own cage.
I missed half of that.
Well, I'm going to have to go and get the archive for it and go. Well, I'm going to have to reformulate that thing because the show I did last night really, to me,
that was the one on having children.
Well, yeah, but then it was about that too. But I mean, that wasn't the real. The whole story was about them using shame to keep us down, to keep us quiet, to duct tape our faces.
So white people stop having children because you're detrimental to nature, isn't that?
Well, but it wasn't.
That's what I got from it.
Well, no, that's the rhetoric. But after that. We went to the whole thing was about the shame game. About the the present mayor of London, Ontario, apologizing for the mayor from '95 for not allowing the LGBTQ to raise the rainbow flag at City Hall. So in 2018, he's apologizing for a mayor in 1995, which is a shame game. Okay? Shame the mayor, shame this ex-mayor, right, for not doing this. And then they had some human rights nonsense going on as well. And then when you get over to the idiot that was writing about the couple that have 5 kids, and that this 5th kid, I guess, is going to be the thing that blows climate change apart and makes world hunger happen, because everything you do has a effect on the global, right? It's that old nonsense they used to apply about if a butterfly flaps its wings in Mexico or something, could it create a typhoon or something somewhere else? Like, this is all bull crap. But, we got looking at the word shame and a few other words attached to it in that, and the fact that each of these words have 2 meanings, a good meaning and a bad meaning, just like a coin has two sides. And what they're doing is they're running everything off the bad side because they're the bad entity, and people don't understand the meaning of words, and that's they're taking us down really through linguistic method of using words of which we don't understand the meaning of, or the general public doesn't understand the meaning of, that there's 2 sides to this word. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to do another show on this sort of thing, because when I went through all of this, I ended up at spell. And that song, I put a spell on you. And when you look at spell, it's the same thing. There's a good side and a bad side. And because they've taken us into a fictional place, okay, it's no different than the word suggest or suggestion, which is hypnotism. So they spew this propaganda at you. You always see it in the papers. The experts suggest, the government suggests, the scientists suggest. It's all hypnotism. In other words, they're putting a spell on you. And when I looked at spell and I took it and I got to community and I went through community and here and there, we end up at communitarianism. I was going to bring that up, where that actually came from, and where the communists actually came from. I was looking at that last night. I'll do that another day. But it all basically stemmed out of the mid-19th century. It's the same time evolution showed up. But when you follow the words through and you understand, and you've been in court before, I know you have, it all boils back down to the spell and guilt. And the words community in that, which is your court system. And I'm going to go through that with Farmer George, because Farmer George is doing some wonderful work. We've all been trying to work our way through this. I mean, anybody with a half sense knows that the legal system is a complete and total fraud, but it's to get it into a context that people can actually understand easier. And the fact is, you've been hypnotized and they put a spell on you and so on and so forth. They just put that in a little bit different context that people can handle. But we got to break the spell. We really have to break the spell. I told this one guy today, I said, back in the day, every town used to have a big bucket of tar and a bunch of feathers. So when this kind of crap came to their town, our forefathers were intelligent enough to see bad and good, see the difference. And when somebody was pushing bad on them, they would simply take them to the edge of town, tar and feather them, kick them in the ass, and tell them never to come back. And this guy's looking at me and he goes, well, you know, that ain't a bad idea, but I think that's against the law now. And I go, oh, God, help me. You know? So this is what they've done. They've really taken the spine out of our men, man. They've really just yanked it. And it's like a bunch of jellyfish running around now. It's really quite sad. Do you know you can go into a grocery store in Kingston, Ontario, and there's hardly any white people in there that even speak English anymore? Do you know that?
Yeah, I saw it once or twice.
Do you know in Kingston, Ontario, that the home of the first Prime Minister of Canada, they built a pub out of his law office, and they called it John's Pub or whatever it's called, but now 12 protesters stood out in front and said John A. Macdonald was a racist, and also went through racism and race and stuff last night, and it doesn't mean anything. You know, it really doesn't mean anything. It's just another word that was used to shame people into submission. So they go in front of the pub, 12 stinking people go in front of the pub, John A. Macdonald was a racist, right? Oh, well, we can't have that, so we'll take John's name off the pub. Eradication of the history of your nation right in front of your eyes. Using shame as a tool. Bloody sad. So I think you ought to run for mayor down there.
What scares me is this is the town that man was the first prime minister of. So I mean, of all cities to start taking away what he did, whether good or bad, it's our history. And I mean, and to do it right here. I mean, do it in Thunder Bay, do it in Kincardine, do it wherever. But this is the town that he made it all.
That's ground zero, right?
You know,
that's ground zero.
Exactly. And now you're taking it out of ground zero. Then what? You're going to put up some Muslim mosques, and then some statues of Mohammed.
Mm-hmm. Like that's when I went to London, Ontario.
Whether he was good or bad, I don't care.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you can just say, we're going to erase this history because we disagree with it, that means you can erase anything that you disagree with. And what they disagree with is the fact that there's white people in this North America. And when they're erasing your history, they're erasing you. And that's the plan. And we best get that through our thick little skulls that we are at war. And because it's not a shoot-'em-up war, we can win the war actually in a more fun type of way. But did I tell you back in Facebook jail again? I put a post up. Yeah. I didn't even share it with anybody. They just stuck it up there one night. And then I thought, I should go and share that with some of these, Save Canada outfits in it. And so I didn't even get to, I just pushed the share button and the thing comes up that I'm in Facebook jail again. Oh, what the hell I do this time?
I think it was the J word again. Well, I read that, and you mentioned something about the Jews.
Did I?
Yeah, you did.
So I'm in jail again. But here's something I should put in. I actually sent it to I got to post it on my own site last night. I can post to my own site. I just can't move it anywhere. But this came out of, this wasn't printed in Canada. It was printed in Britain. And The Guardian, right, which I believe is left wing. I keep saying this all the time. Hopefully it gets through people's heads, This is an opinion piece in The Guardian, and the headline is, the Canada Experiment, Is This the World's First Post-National Country? By Charles Foran. And when Justin Trudeau said there is no core identity, no mainstream in Canada, he was articulating a uniquely Canadian philosophy that some find bewildering. So I just write this shit, right? Like the moral men and women who built this country better understand the threat before us. If the load of globalist linguistic garbage presented below doesn't motivate you, nothing will. And never forget, anger is a gift because it is a motivator. And his little piece here, our government believes, this is out of the opinion piece, our government believes in the value of immigration and as does the majority of the population. We took an estimate 300,000 newcomers in 2016, including around 50,000 refugees, and we want them to become citizens. Around 85% of permanent residents eventually do. Recently, there have been concerns about bringing in single Arab men, but otherwise, Canada welcomes people from all faiths and corners. The Greater Toronto Area is now the most diverse city on the planet, with half of its residents from outside the country. Vancouver, Calgary, Ottawa, and Montreal aren't far behind. So I just ask people to go and read the whole article, and it's written in such a way, and this gives me a little bit of, I don't know the word I'm looking for. I like it because people are starting to get how things are written. Lori writes, yes, this article is definitely a pile of linguistic garbage, or in the vernacular, bullshit baffles brains. It was actually painful to read through this crap. I agree, says Rose, just skimmed over it, and I'm trying hard to see what the heck the point was. This is written in the International Linguistic Method, which is the way all UN documents are written. So while they write everything down, it's so convoluted and screwed up that most people won't get through 2 pages. And, you know, they write these documents that are hundreds and hundreds of pages long, and it's almost like you have to, reading this stuff is like understanding a foreign language, basically. It's very difficult to read. It contradicts itself constantly. But you got to sift through it to get the actual meaning of what they're trying to tell you, which they could have done in 2 paragraphs. But they string it out, make your head hurt, and people don't want to read it. And then they turn around and say, well, wait a minute. We wrote it down. We told you exactly what we're doing, and you didn't do nothing about it. You didn't say nothing about it, so your silence is consent, period. And that's why they write this garbage. So Lori writes, I think someone is trying to sell the idea that there is no such thing as a Canadian national identity, but it's so convoluted, it's virtually unreadable and makes no sense whatsoever. And this is true. Brian writes, you have no right to play God, giving money, our commerce, our work to Israel and forces to fight ISIS, to train them, to equip them, to wage war on their own governments. So you think you are saving yourself from having to twisted logic, irrational thinking, world destructive force, and you and your kind must be stopped. Why are those people ever needing to come here? Who and what made refugees of them? You used us to wage this war, and now you will use us to create another front where you attack us from within. You sick and twisted, demented so-called leaders and governments supplying Saudis to bomb Yemen and terrorize their own people, attack Venezuela with sanctions and false pretense to support the Israel-owned U.S. of, what's that say, hey? Experiment my ass, mass genocide for the rich, that's all. The mafia's in power, Satan rules. Amen to your comments, brother. and so on. And I haven't posted this to anywhere yet because I can't. I'm still in jail. These are just people that ran into my Facebook, and this is their thought process. And their thought process is absolutely correct.
Well, everything you said is the truth.
Well, yeah, but
and then they bring it back. Everything that they've done for our countries. I think the States is worse than us. I don't know if we have it as bad as the States as far as the TSA is concerned, but that now you've got to go through being molested or radiated to board a plane, and I think soon trains, and it's because of what they've done over there, and then bring it back. They go, we're here to protect you.
Well, that's what I've been saying for years. Okay, they specifically want to take down the West. Yeah. Specifically, two things have to disappear: the Christian faith, for as screwed up as that is, and the Constitution of the not the United States, but the American Constitution, which are two different things. Those things have to fall. Those are the cornerstones of North America. Those are also the cornerstones of the West, but most importantly in North America, and they have to be made go away. So they specifically planned, they plan everything. They planned the first two world wars, every war before, every war after. And the whole idea was to get rid of the Christian faith and the constitutions, which means you got to open your borders, which kills your constitution. And we have to replace Christianity, which is standing in the way of the globalists because they work for the other side and they want to impose Islam in our nation. So how are you going to get all these Islamic people into the countries? Well, you bomb the shit out of their countries, you turn them into refugees, and then you pull out the shame card and the empathy card, and then you get the churches and everybody, look what all the poor migrants, and we got to give them a home. And next thing you know, your borders are down, and you're being flooded with an invasion, a planned invasion. Now, I'm really happy to read some of these comments that people left, because anger is a gift, and without anger you can't get motivated. And by the sound of these people that left those few comments there, they're beginning to get it. Years ago, I wrote stuff, and people would yell at me for having no empathy and yada yada yada. Now it's finally moving in the right direction, so I'm quite happy with the comments. And once I'm out of jail, I'll post the snot out of this thing. So anyways, I'm going to put this, I know a lot of people don't use Facebook, so I'll just go get the story and stuff it in the, and you want some convoluted, what do they call it? I call it linguistic garbage. What did you call it? Bullshit baffles brains, yeah. And that's exactly true. So we'll stick this in, it's the same thing, So, Canadians love this, right? It's like the same thing as our mayor down here saying, the residents of Kincardine are all for a nuclear waste dump on the shores of Lake Huron. Well, no, we're not. And same thing with this nonsense, right? But this is not an opinion piece in Canada. This is an opinion piece in a British paper. Okay? So you can spin this any way you want because it's not directly going to Canadians. It's going everywhere but. Now, I want to do this thing quick too, Chris. Apparently a French company who is a huge milk producer and milk products producer, I saw that late last night, 12 million packages, I think it is, of dried baby formula or something, has been recalled because of salmonella. And there's been a bunch of lawsuits launched. It's affected 83 countries, I think. And one of the things I found interesting was that the last line on the story was that the company is not legally obligated to disclose the problem. It was just through lawsuits and that the company finally had to get their act together and do something about it. If I can find this, get the story. What am I looking for here? Oh. I got to say one thing. The internet is much of a closed down, controlled opposition mechanism that it is that it's so much easier. I mean, I remember when I was first researching back in the 70s. I mean, the fact that people are still ignorant to a great extent kills me, because anything you want to know, all you got to do is, hit a search engine and it'll pop it for you. I mean, the amount of hours we used to have to spend in the library going through reference books to even get a start point was ridiculous. And yet today, people just seem just as ignorant or more ignorant than they were back then. Anyways, here's the story real quick. Lactalis to withdraw 12 million boxes of baby milk in salmonella scandal. The head of the French dairy at the center of the international salmonella scandal has promised to withdraw 12 million boxes off the supermarket shelves of 83 countries. And it goes on. I'll put this story in too. But this is what kills me at the end. Our priority has always been to manage the crisis and to ensure that there are no sick children. We're told that the unwell babies are doing well, which is the most important thing. Where's that line that I'm looking for? Has it been moved? Where did that line go? Because when I sent this to Michael last night, because under European law, the company is only obliged to flag up reports of contamination if its products are affected and could be a threat to the public. But I'm sure the last line that was in here, and it was late last night, unless the line was somewhere else. Yeah, because the last line I found off of this when I sent it to the line that was in, just let me do this. The line that was in here, which really kills me, because Michael had been chased around for 24 years. No one's ever gotten ill. And the problem with these big multinationals is they have the ability, when they screw up on their product, to make people, in this case, 83 different countries. Now, Michael supplies 150 families, or he did supply 150 families, with raw milk products, cheese, a lot of baked goods, which had nothing to do with milk, and organic food. But this is what it said, and I quoted this. The company said it was not legally bound to report the contamination. Meanwhile, Michael, who has never contaminated anything or anyone, is continually raided and dragged through courts for pretty much, I don't know, there was ever a year that in 24 years that he wasn't in a court case somewhere. And this is the difference between huge multinational companies and local co-ops. Right? The local co-op is going to go overboard to make sure that its customers and everything they get are safe. A big international company is only interested in one thing realistically, and that's profit margin. So that's the point I was trying to make. Way you go.
You're a hard guy to talk to sometimes.
I apologize for that, but I just wanted to get that out.
You know, your milk supply has been bad for, like, I don't know. I'll throw the number out there. I'm pretty sure I'm correct or close to it. About 50 years, your milk supply has been poisoned. Now, when they clean it up and do what Michael does, which is the best, cleanest milk you could ever drink, you go to a factory farm. They got the cleanest, most sterilized factories, and they feed all their cows really healthy GMO corn mixed with a mulch of bugs and whatever they got, you know. And it's not milk anymore. Like, you know, I know you go on about this, and I really don't want to go on, but it's really important for people to understand that the milk you're drinking now from your stores is actually toxic. You know, unfortunately, I'm drinking it because I'm not around Michael. I wished I was. But the milk is toxic. I mean, it's not how clean the barn is on these new production facilities. It's what they're putting in the cows. They're not injecting them here in Canada. I think they still are in the States. But even here in Canada, it's what they're feeding them. Well, you know, like Mike puts them out to pasture, and they eat grass. That's what they're supposed to do.
That's what they're supposed to eat.
But that's not happening here. No. I mean, even I beg her to question whether cows that are actually eating grass here in my city, well, outside of my city in the farm area, with a farm beside it that's spraying soybeans and corn, all GMO, and you got the pasture beside it with a guy trying to produce organic milk. What the wind blows, right? So, I mean, is that hitting the grass and the cows are eating that, and then even your organic isn't organic anymore? I mean, this is getting wild.
Yeah, I know. You know, it's like Rockefeller said: control the food, control the people, and that's the whole point: is control of the people.
Like even Michael's
control
farm.
Everything. That's Rockefeller. So
I got to be honest with you. Even Michael's farm, who's beside him?
No, Michael's farm. No.
What are they spraying on their crops?
No, the farm. Michael's farm set up like an old style farm.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm talking about his neighbors.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's the same as my uncle's farms. They had buffer zones, right? Michael's farm, there's nobody anywhere near him that is the way his farm's set up. He's got bush along all the edges, and the center is the center of the farm is the grazing area, and it's the grazing area is a long ways off the roads. No, he's old style farm. There's nothing getting in there.
I understand that, but I'm old style farmer meeting a new style farmer who's his neighbor, and the wind blows. What's he getting on his?
No. That's not gonna. It's not happening in there. I know what you're saying because a friend of mine has a farm just north of me, and he is going to go into organic chickens and that, right? And he was really pissed because a guy bought the field next to his field, and in come the GMO crops and Roundup, right? Blowing all over his stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Because the only thing separating these two things is a fence, right? A wire fence. You know, he tried to grow organic chickens for a year or two and give up on the idea. Because it's impossible for him to grow an organic chicken beside these other fields. There's no separation, right, except the stupid little wire fence. But Michael's setup is completely different, and the other farmers. But you know, when I talked to that young farmer at the courthouse or we're having lunch outside the courthouse in Newmarket, and he's only in his mid-late 30s. He grew up after normal farming practices, And and I asked him what's the lifespan of one of his commercial cows. He said 4 years, right, or less. And Michael has got cows that are 16 freaking years old. They're just old cows now, but I mean, they're getting at least a minimum of 8 to 10 years out of those milkers versus 4. And he doesn't have a huge vet bill, right? Because the cows don't get sick. Because they're not being, like you said, being shoved food they're not even supposed to be consuming. When was the last time you ever saw a cow wandering around in a cornfield eating corn? That ain't even part of their diet. And all this other junk they're shoving into them. Your food's toxic. It's that simple. Your food is toxic. Now here's a picture of Elise, Michael's wife, going through the barn with some of the co-op owners after the injunction came through. And I don't think there's anybody in here who, everybody in that lineup, maybe the last person at the back has dark hair, but everybody else is generally late 60s into their 80s, who understand the value of good food, grew up when they had good food, and they're members of the co-op because they want good food. These are not, when you look at these people, these are not what you would call radicals. These are old people who still have the value of good food in their mind versus the younger people who wouldn't know good food if they tripped over it. And these are the people that are being denied their right to consume what they know is healthy. These are the people who have decided that they would take whatever risk, and they know there's no risk there, to consume the products from the farm. And they've been not denied the right to do so. And that is just bloody wrong. So I sent Michael a note, I said, in the end, the people will be victorious. And we will be. Because we're going to take back our resources. And one of our most important resources is our food system. If you have a toxic food system, well, nothing else really matters. If you're not eating, if you don't have the availability to good, healthy food, what else matters? Nothing. Your government is toxifying your system on purpose because they can. And if that don't tick people off, I don't know what will. You're being poisoned. Walk in a grocery store. Find me something that hasn't been adulterated or has been toxified. Find me something. I don't think you can. It's not real food.
Well, they brought in glucose, fructose, corn syrup. When did they introduce that? I believe it was in the mid-50s.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
It was pretty minor. And I'll be honest with you, when I was younger, I really enjoyed that on pancakes. I thought it was better than maple syrup. I had no clue. I mean, they make it taste so good. And, it's full of mercury, and it did. But nobody asked any questions. It just, it tastes good.
Well, it's because it was advertised to you on the television. If they'd advertise it truthfully.
That's what they called it, I think. I think the stuff I bought was called honeybee and was shaped in a cone.
Oh, yeah. I remember that stuff. We used to love that shit.
Man, it was good.
But the commercial was cool, right? So it didn't really matter, Like when I was a kid, I got hooked on honeycomb cereal because it was a hero cowboy with a chuck wagon running around. Yeah. So a kid of 8 years old or whatever is going, yeah, I need to eat that stuff.
Yeah.
And all it was a sugar bomb.
A fructose, high fructose glucose.
Oh yeah,
sugar bomb.
Yeah, get wound up pretty good.
But I guess it's like, other than they want to kill us, I guess that costs like 10% of them actually using like cane sugar, real sugar, even though I know sugar is not good for you. But that's how they got that introduced. They chemically formulated it, and it costs 10% the cost for the manufacturer, and they sell it for the same price, and they make it taste real good, and you think it's real good, and no wonder they're rich and we're poor.
Exactly. I mean, we've proven over and over and over again we ain't real bright, because they shovel this nonsense at us and we don't even question it. We just go, oh, I should get some of that. Why? I don't know. It was on TV. I should get some of that. Or there's a jingle on the radio. Oh, that sounds cool. People are still eating McDonald's foods after all these years. I find that difficult to believe. And then when I speak to people uptown, I see the result of it. Duh.
Yeah, but you got to understand, Ron, it's gotten to the point now where 80% of your food, don't take me, do the research yourself, but I'm going to suggest 80% of your food that you eat has been harmed in some way, to the point that unless you grow your own and you can put a canopy over your property and still get sunlight somehow, you're going to be eating something unhealthy, because they've been contaminating us for that long.
Well, yeah, it's like the gentleman.
Like 80% of our food is gone.
Yeah, I can't remember. It was either 7 or 14 years. Paul, who's also a farmer, who's an organic farmer, bought a farm, and it was either 7 or 14 years he figured it took to cleanse the land enough to actually start growing food on it again. That's how toxic everything is. You got these people who grow a backyard garden, right? And then they got signs all over their lawn, don't let your dog on the lawn, it's toxic because we just sprayed for dandelions. So what the hell does dandelion ever do to you?
Warning signs, yeah.
And then they say they're growing an organic garden. Like, you just
there is some sites there, Ron. I can't get them offhand, but I mean, this is for education purposes.
Yeah,
there is somebody I looked into that said there is a way that you could actually clean your garden around in a year.
Yeah, it may have. I think it may have
very
deep
to do. Stuff that you got to get involved in.
We're going to hit music here real quick. I think ash is ash is one of the cleansers, I believe. Could be wrong on that, but there are ways to organically cleanse, basically suck the toxins back out of the ground.
Yeah,
and cleanse the land. So we're just about out of time here. I should get an organic farmer on the show. I know a few of them. And talk
Michael?
About that stuff. But if I am not back on air Tuesday night, that means I didn't escape from the community center when I went to see the Lieutenant Governor. So either I'll be back here Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, or you're going to get dead air, depending how I'm accepted at this meeting with our Lieutenant Governor in there. Might be my last day on it. Anyways, everybody take care. We're out of time. Thank you so much, Chris. And we'll be back here Tuesday night. Otherwise, everybody have a great day. And don't forget, Al, going at 3 o'clock. Don't let him finish work.
They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one makes gun, trees, laugh to your face.